But let me give a little background to where we are in the book of Genesis. So Genesis can be broken up into 4 sections here. So the first section is creation and the fall of man. When the Lord created the heavens and the earth, when the Lord created the mountains and all the living creatures, as well as man. And we read in Genesis chapter 3 how man fell. They sinned against the Lord in the garden. In the second part of Genesis, we read about the flood. We read about there were these angelic beings having relations with the women, with human women. And so the Lord decided to judge the earth with water. And then we come to the next section, which is the Tower of Babel. The Lord told the humans, hey, go and spread across the globe. But they decided, how about we build a temple that reaches all the way to the sky in defiance to you, Lord? And so the Lord, as we know, confused their languages. And that's how we were able to spread across the globe. And then after Babel, we come to the section of the patriarchs. And the first patriarch we read about is Abraham, which his name beforehand was called Abram. And then we read about his son Isaac, and then Jacob. And now in chapter 37, we come to the next patriarch in line, Joseph. And I know many of y'all know the account of Joseph, and we'll be spending the next couple of weeks seeing what Moses has to write down about him. So let's start. Genesis chapter 37, starting in verse 1. And it says, Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Jacob's name is also Israel. You remember when the Lord changed his name. You're no longer Jacob, but Israel. So same person. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was a son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So we read, Jacob is living in the land of Canaan. Now, where is Canaan? Well, in the ancient world, Canaan was a prosperous region situated on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, today, the territory of Canaan, it encompasses modern-day Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, all those countries you hear about in the news. And what's the significance of this place? Well, Canaan is the foundational territory of the Abrahamic covenant. If you remember, the Lord had promised this specific land to Abraham and promised it to Isaac and Jacob, that they would have this land. You can go back to Genesis chapter 28 and read a little bit more about that. And again, Moses now shifts gears and gives an account of one of Jacob's sons named Joseph. And it introduces an account when Joseph was 17 years old, he was tending the flocks with his half-brothers. Now, Joseph and his brothers, again, as I just mentioned, were half-brothers because they shared the same father, but they had different mothers. And in fact, Jacob had 4 wives. He had Rachel and Leah, and then he had his secondary wives, his maidservants, or Rachel and Leah's maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah. Now, in this account, it seems that the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, are kind of the antagonists in this story. They're the ones promulgating the envy and the hatred. But again, it's all the brothers, but it seems to be specifically these ones that we should take note of, especially. And we read, one day Joseph's brothers, they were doing something a little bit nefarious, something they shouldn't be doing. And he goes, Joseph, and he tells Jacob, his daddy. And again, you can imagine just boys being out in the fields, tending the flocks, and they're bantering, they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. And Joseph, the youngest, hears about it. Oh, how could you do that? And he goes and runs home and says, Dad, do you know what my brothers were doing? In verse 3, it also highlights that Joseph was the favorite child. He was a child who Jacob loved comparatively to his other children. Why? Because Joseph was born when Jacob was older. And he loved him so much that he made Joseph a coat of many colors. Again, because he was his favorite. Now, this coat of many colors, it would have been a status during this time. Working shepherds typically wore short and sleeveless tunics that were kind of coarse, not the most comfortable to wear. They were undyed, so they would have been brown or some neutral color. But Joseph is given this beautiful tunic. Now, there's two main interpretations of what this tunic could have looked like. Now, there's a construction view, which the word pasim can mean palms or soles. So many translations favor Joseph was giving a long-sleeved robe, not like a worker's robe, but like a fitted robe. I don't know if you all have been to Men's Warehouse and you get your suit fitted. You didn't just get a suit from Goodwill. No, this is a nice suit. But the traditional view is that this was maybe a vibrant, maybe even an embroidered type of tunic, richly ornamented, featuring intricate woven stripes and embroidery. But very much like his set of parents, Jacob's parents, and Jacob's parents again were Isaac and Rebekah. Jacob struggles with showing favoritism to his sons. And you would think, after Jacob had lived through the difficulties of his parents showing favoritism, again, Isaac loved Esau. Remember Esau? He was the redhead. They called him Big Red. He liked to be in the fields. And then Rachel loved, who did Rachel love? Well, Rebecca, not Rachel. Rebecca loved Jacob. And there was favoritism which was happening there. And just as Isaac and Rebecca's favoritism fractured that family, Jacob's favoritism towards his sons is going to fracture their family as well, as we'll read further on. And when Joseph's brothers saw that he got this new gift, and you can imagine Christmas morning, it's like they're opening the gifts and, oh, you got me something from Goodwill. That's okay, thank you, Dad. And then it's, all right, Joseph, it's your turn. And he opens and they're videoing the camcorder, and Joseph gets Gucci, whoa, and he gets a PS5, oh my goodness. And then the other sons have, store Goodwill bought toys. And they were envious of him. And it says they hated him and couldn't say anything nice about him. They couldn't speak peaceably to him. And then to get into some principles and application, hate never stays hidden in the heart. Eventually, hate will break out. In the first stage of internal bitterness, the first stage of hate, like cancer, you have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. Well, the first stage of hate is almost always unwholesome or weaponized speech directed at the person we hate, directed to the person we resent. And again, we read in verse 4, if you want to look back. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not what? Speak peaceably to him. We know what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. Out of the abundance, the heart speaks. And the brothers thought maybe they were just reacting to this coat. All right, Jacob has a nice coat, and I have this. But their words were actually showing the true condition of their hearts, of their souls. They hated him for it. And again, the beginning, the genesis of hate can look like speaking ill and unkindly to people. His brothers can't even say, what would the Jews say? When two Jews met, what would they say? Does anyone know? Shalom, which is, what does that mean? Does anyone know? Peace. They would say, shalom, shalom, peace, peace. But they can't even say peace to him. It says they were speaking unpeaceably to him. And in the ancient world, in the Jewish culture, when you wouldn't say shalom, it shows that there's hostility brewing. Because you're saying peace. Hey, peace. What's up, man? Peace. It's like, hey, shalom. It's like, are we okay? You didn't say it back. We don't have peace here. There's hostility. And I don't think we should not trick ourselves into thinking that, well, if I just think it, or maybe if I whisper it and say it, at least it's not as bad as physically, doing anything with my hatred. If I don't do anything physically, then I'm okay. I'm just thinking it and speaking it. Well, that's a slippery slope that everyone will fall down on. And before Joseph's brothers even laid a physical hand on him, they attacked Joseph with what? Their tongues. And what does James talk about? The tongue cannot be controlled. It's like a fire that brews and can destroy a forest. You can tame the wild beasts of the earth, but no one can tame the tongue. Well, so what's the principle here? Well, it's that physical violence is almost always preceded by verbal violence. Physical violence is almost always preceded by verbal. Verbal typically comes first, and then physical comes shortly afterwards. And one can use, as I just wrote, one can use harsh, they can use sarcastic, they can even use cruel words to lower the value of a person and their minds before they mistreat someone with their actions. You speak bad about them. You're in the shower brewing, to do this and do that. And constant unwholesome speech, guys, it changes us. It hardens your heart. It numbs you. It sears your conscience. And if one speaks about someone like they are the enemy, long enough, they're going to treat them like the enemy. But what does Jesus call us to do? Does Jesus call us to speak unpeaceably to people? No, Jesus calls us to pray for our enemies, to bless our enemies, he goes so far to say. Hate is like acid, or hate is like mold. If you have mold in your bathroom, it's like, oh, there's a little bit of mold there, but it's not too bad. Well, if you don't deal with the mold in your bathroom, eventually your ceiling is going to fall and cave in itself because it's rotting. And that's hate. There's a little bit of hate. I'm just saying a couple words. It's not too bad. Again, sin is a good mathematician. Sin multiplies upon each other. And it will corrode every area in a person's life. And we will see this in this account. Going on, verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed, your sheaf stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams. And notice this part. And for his words. Again, I'll come back to that part. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So we read, one night Joseph had a dream, and he relays it to his brothers. Hey guys, I've had a dream. Like, oh no, here we go. Okay, this is a dream. We were binding sheaves of wheat in the field, and my sheep stood in the middle, and yours, how do I say this? Yours bowed down to mine. And Joseph's brothers, their response was to ask, you think you're going to rule over us, little brother? You think you're going to be king over me? I'm older than you. And their attitude was what? Even more hate. And I think this is multiplied because in the way in which Joseph shared and described his dreams. We think, and I think most of us can think, Joseph is totally in the right. There's nothing wrong with him. I think I would push back a little bit. I think Joseph is being a little bit of a brat here. Verse 8. So they hated him even more for his dreams. And for what? For his words. So you can imagine Joseph strutting in there. Hey, boys. What do you want? I had a dream. And you know how dad likes me. And, but anyways, y'all were bowing down to me. It's like no big deal. That's how Joseph was speaking to his brothers. And they hated him for that. Who do you think you are, little brother? And then, you can imagine, shortly afterwards, Joseph has another dream. And this one is even crazier than the first. And what's the description? Well, Joseph describes that, hey, I had another dream. Hey, Dad, you're going to want to listen to this. There were 11 stars, and there was the sun and the moon, and they were all bowing down to, guess what? Me. I'm just so great, am I? I think he's being a little bit of a brat here. Again, you all have younger siblings. You know how they can pull on your strings. And again, this time he doesn't just share with his brothers. He shares with his dad. What's the representation? The 11 stars are his brothers. The 11 sheaves of wheat are his brothers. But now the sun and the moon, the sun being his dad, the moon being his mother, and they're bowing down to him. And his father, what does it say? His father rebuked Joseph. Joseph, you think we're going to bow down to you? But Jacob, it says he quietly kept the matter and he pondered it. Can you imagine? Okay, Joseph. But he's like, that's a little weird. That's strange. I wonder why he's dreaming dreams like that. Meanwhile, the brothers' jealousy grew into an all-consuming resentment and envy. The Hebrew word there for jealous or envy, depending on your translation, in this verse is quana, Q-A-N-A. And in Scripture, this means a burning, intense heat. So think of a picture of there's a fire, and you just begin to throw logs and sticks and leaves, dry leaves upon it, and it begins to become bigger and bigger, and the fire's consuming, and then eventually it's going to destroy the whole forest. This is what's happening, this jealousy, this intense hatred towards Joseph. And when the brothers saw that their father questioning, or even to the point of scolding Joseph, I think this poured gasoline on their hatred. And I think we can often find ourselves justifying our own bitterness when we see an authority figure or when we see a group of people echoing the same negative feelings toward a situation. Look, I'm not the only one who hates this. These people hate him as well. Even Dad is speaking ill of Joseph this time. And often when we have ill feelings towards someone, we want the whole world to know. We want our family to know. We want our friends to know. And we'll talk to them about that situation in a degrading way. And we'll try to rally other people around them in our hate towards a person. I want people to support how I feel. But if we have a grievance towards someone, and hopefully y'all take this to heart, if you have a grievance towards someone, if there's animosity in a relationship in your life, you're not permitted to gossip about them. You're not permitted to even vent. Is venting a sin? Yes, it is. I'm just speaking to my husband about it, or I'm just speaking to my friend about it. No, you're venting. All right, you're not permitted to recruit allies or create secret group chats without that friend. So you can just no. What does Scripture tell us to do? Well, the Matthew 18 principle says, hey, go up to that person. Maybe bring a friend along with you and pray and hope for reconciliation. Guys, despite what the title says, the church is a greenhouse, or is called to be a greenhouse of a transforming love, not an arena for human hostility. And so for us, and I'm taking this to heart as well, we must never weaponize the church, community, or social circles, or use the pulpit itself to air personal grievances, or target political figures, or tear down specific individuals in the congregation. Shouldn't be Christians that bond with people over hating other people. I hate that group of people. They're just so weird. That's not Christ-like. Verse 12. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. By the way, when you read Shechem, alarms need to be going off. If you remember in a couple chapters ago, you could probably flip a page or two. Something terrible happened in Shechem. Really bad if you want to read it, if you have the stomach for it. So when you read Shechem, just know, this is not going to be good. So he said to him, here I am. Verse 14, then he said to him, please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks and bring back word to me. So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what are you seeking? Dude, what are you doing here? So he said, I'm seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks. And the man said, they have departed from here, for I have heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. So shortly after Joseph shared his dream, Jacob, again, Joseph's dad, calls him and says, hey, pack your bags. You're about to go. All right, where I'm going, you're going to go check on your brothers. So apparently Joseph's brothers, they had been pasturing their flocks and they had traveled and they had been gone for some time. And Jacob just wanted to check on his sons. What are they doing? They've been gone for a little bit. Says, Joseph, I need you to go check on your brothers. You can imagine, again, Joseph is a tattletale of the family. Oh, of course, I'll bring a good report to you, Dad. I got this. And so we read, Joseph travels from the valley of Hebron to Shechem. And he's kind of, as we read, he's a lost puppy. He's, looking for his brothers. I don't know where they are. He's asking people on the street. And someone notices him and asks him, what are you doing here? You're not from this part of town, are you? So, by the way, Hebron was a family home base. So this is where they're staying. And so he's traveling close to 50 miles. So again, he's a long way from home. Think from here to Roanoke and some change of him walking. And Joseph replies that he was looking for, I'm looking for my brothers. And the man replies, oh, yeah, that group. Yeah, they were, where are they? They're at Dothan. Yeah, they're over there. And Dothan was situated along a major international highway. A lot of people pass through there. Now, verse 18. Now, when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, the dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, some wild beast devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. Verse 23. So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. Yikes. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Joseph is coming. He's approaching from afar off, and his brothers notice him. What is that? Oh, no. Hey, what's going on? It's the dreamer. No, it's not. It is Joseph. And one of them says, hey, why don't we just kill him? What? Yeah, let's just kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns here, one of these pits. And then we'll just tell Dad, some wild animal got him, And his dreams came to nothing. Hate, as I mentioned before, will wreck and bring havoc to a person's life. And again, hate is poison. Hate is acid. Hate is mold. And eventually, a person, one begins to fantasize about what they would do to the other party. If they could, if I had the chance, this is what I would do. And that hatred turns into full-blown, ungodly fantasizing. You know what it means to fantasize? Just sit down and think, this is what I want. And by the way, notice the terrifying speed of their conspiracy in verses 18 through 20. The moment they see Joseph from afar off, over their horizon, they don't even hesitate. They immediately present a fully formed, multi-step plan to murder and fake his own death. By the way, you don't come up with a complex murder and cover-up plot in 3 seconds. It's like, no, they've been thinking about this. And I think the speed of their conspiracy proves that they've been rehearsing the scenario in their minds for quite some time. Their brothers, Joseph's brothers, had already killed Joseph in their imagination countless and countless and countless of times. This is what I would do to Joseph. If only I had the chance. Because I hate him. Guys, every outward sin is first given a dress rehearsal. How many of y'all do theater? Or before theater, before the big play, you have dress rehearsal. And you go over, this is what we're going to do. You're going to say this. You make sure you project. You're going to wear this. You got to stand over there. And then the big day comes and you do it. Well, the same thing when it comes to sin, when it comes to hate. It's given a dress rehearsal in the mind. And long before you have the big day, you've already toyed with the fantasy in your heart. You know where to stand. You know what to say. You know where to go. I've done this countless of times. And then when the opportunity presents itself, boom, you pull the trigger. Why? Oh, we've been down this road. I've had the railroads. And now I'm here. And so, guys, if you allow yourself mentally to rehearse someone else's failure or downfall or exit, your hands eventually will build the pit the moment the opportunity presents itself. Because you're rehearsing unrighteousness. You're fantasizing about it. I hate this person. Because why? And here's the thing. It might even, quote unquote, be justified. Dad loves him and he's being a jerk. Or he ruined our family. Or he ruined, my sibling family. Or whatever it may be. And you just hate that person. And you're struggling with that anger. You begin to rehearse. I wish they had never met. I wish I could do this. I wish I could say this to her face or his face. But as believers, we're called to rehearse righteousness, not rehearse unrighteousness. What does Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 say? I'll read it for you. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. All right, so Paul's going to write one final thing. What would he say? Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable, right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Guys, rehearsing righteousness means when a bitter fantasy, pops into your mind, you immediately evict that fantasy. It's like, ooh, where did that come from? That's pretty evil. That's pretty messed up. All right, Lord, clear my thoughts. Lord, let me replace it by mentally rehearsing what is true, what is honorable about your promises instead. And Reuben, we read, he jumps into the conversation and said, hey, okay, boys, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him into a pit. Let's not lay our hands on him. By the way, Reuben was the oldest of Jacob's sons, so he's the firstborn. And as the eldest, Reuben carried the ultimate spiritual and legal responsibility for the safety and responsibility of his younger brothers. And we read that Reuben planned on saving Joseph later. And so Joseph, what happens? He meets his brothers. Hey guys, Dad is looking for you. And immediately, it says his robe was torn off him of many colors, and he's thrown into a cistern. Now, don't think, let's take off your jacket, okay? No, think of, they humiliated him. They stripped him naked, and they threw him into a hole, a dark hole. Maybe he's hurt, maybe it's a far way down. A cistern. This is a massive subterranean, so underneath the earth, pit, where when it would rain, it would come into this hole and store water in which they could get water from the earth. So they throw him into this dry well, essentially. And what do we read here? This is the crazy part, I think, to the story. Joseph's brothers, after they strip him down naked and throw him into a pit, eat. They eat a meal. I was thinking about this. I was getting piped up, studying this last night. But when hate is dwelt upon consistently, and when hate is, over and over, and you're thinking about it over and over, eventually it will become normal. And it'll become accepted in your life. Again, guys, the image of his brothers eating a meal while his brother is trapped in a pit is one of the most chilling scenes in the Old Testament. It shows this is the end game of unchecked bitterness and hatred in one's life. Total emotional numbness. It's like, all right, he's screaming, he's crying, he's wondering what's going on. What should we order? I'll take number 4. All right, that sounds great. And guys, the first time you may speak an ill word towards someone with a little bit of venom, it kind of stings your conscience. Ooh, I probably shouldn't have said that. That was a little harsh. The first time you exclude someone, you feel a twinge of guilt. I probably shouldn't have done that. I just really don't like them. But if you keep feeding that hatred over and over and over, eventually your heart becomes numb. It's like, yeah, I'll just eat, whatever. Their hatred had become so normalized, Joseph's brothers, that it no longer felt, I believe, like sin. It just felt like, yeah, we're just shooting the breeze. Hate, guys, will blind you. Hate always blinds you if it's not dealt with. Think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. You all know that parable? There's a fellow traveler. He's beaten and robbed, and he's dying in the middle of the street. And here comes the priest. It's like, oh, what's wrong with him? And he's a priest. He's in ministry. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm going the other way. And then here comes another pastor. And he sees the beaten man, struggling to breathe. And says, yeah, I'm not. I don't got time for that. And he goes on the other side as well. And then what does Jesus say? And then comes this Good Samaritan. Here comes a Nazi. And the Nazi sees this beaten Jew. And the Nazi says, hey, let me help you. And he helps the person. What's the point of that parable? The pastor and the priest, they hated, I can't become unclean. If I touch that person, I'm going to become unclean, and I can't do that. And the religious system and hatred of Samaritans made them indifferent to a dying neighbor. And that's what happens when you hate. You just don't, I don't even bat an eye, whatever. Guys, if you don't repent of your resentment early, your heart will eventually become normalized to it. And it won't even be directed towards that specific person. It will be directed towards your family as well. Well, Joseph's brothers, they see a caravan of camels and Ishmaelites, traders, and they're heading down to Egypt. By the way, the Ishmaelites were descendants of Ishmael, who was Abraham's firstborn son. Let's go on to read verse 26. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by, so the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his clothes, and he returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and where shall I go?" So Judah, again, Judah is one of Joseph's brothers, mentions that, hey, if Joseph dies here, what do we have to gain? We don't gain anything. I mean, I guess Joseph's off the face of the earth, but what if we just sell him? There's some traders right there. We'll just sell him into slavery. And maybe we'll get some money out of it. So Joseph's brothers, they pull him out of the pit. Maybe Joseph thought this was some terrible prank. That was not kind, guys. I just wait till my, daddy hears about this. And then he's, handcuffed and then thrown into the back of the trunk. They're sold into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. By the way, 20 pieces of silver. That means his brother gets 2 pieces of silver. Okay. It's a lot of money, I guess. By the way, whenever silver is transferred in the scriptures, again, alarms need to be going up. When silver is given over to someone, it's almost never a good sign when it comes to the Bible reading. Think of Judas and Jesus. And Judges read about this guy named Abimelech, and he hires people using silver to kill all 70 of his brothers. Think of Delilah betraying Samson for, 1,100 pieces of silver. It's almost never good. So they sell his brother, and he's on his way to Africa. And Reuben returns to the pit, the older brother, and discovers Joseph is gone. He's overwhelmed with grief and terror. He rips his clothes and cries out. Again, a dramatic, not just a dramatic gesture, but it signifies, what have I done? His heart is ripped. And we go on to end in verse 31 through 36. So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent a tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him." Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. So the brothers come up with this plan to deceive their father. And they go with it to fake his own death. So Joseph's brothers, they take his robe of many colors, they kill a kid, a baby goat, they dip it in the blood, and they essentially Amazon Prime it to dad. It's like, I don't want to. Let's just mail it to him. That might be a little better. And they ask, is this your son's? And Jacob recognizes it as Joseph's and concludes, oh no, a wild beast has gotten to him. And Jacob is in distress. He dresses in burlap, which is think of an itchy shirt, and he's mourning and he's refusing to be comforted. Hey dad, you haven't eaten in a while. Get out of here. Joseph is dead. And again, this was his favorite son, the one whom he loved. And the caravan who bought Joseph, again, sells him to a man named Potiphar, who worked for Pharaoh, which we'll hit on not next week, but the following week. So to conclude and to give some application real quick, 4 points from this message. Number one, Hatred always leaks through our language first. Maybe not always, but I think most of the time, hatred always leaks through language. Before a hand is ever raised, before you throw your brother into a pit, the tongue goes to war. And the brothers' downward spiral began simply because they refused to say shalom. They withheld peace, and they weaponized silence and sharp words instead. So believers, you must actively fulfill Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Evict those toxic dialogue. Rehearse righteousness in your speech. What I said during camp. Take inventory of your words and how you speak to others. Number 2, bitterness will look for an echo chamber to justify itself. You try to get other people to, make sure you feel justified in your hatred towards this specific group or this individual. But reject the urge to build a coalition around an offense. Guys, if you have a grievance, again, the Matthew chapter 18 principle, go to them with a brother or sister in the Lord and seek in private and seek reconciliation. Number 3, hatred of another will often lead to fantasizing harm done to them. I just hate that person. If I could only do this, if they said this is what I would do, and I would spike them for that. Or if I were alone with that person, you give me an hour with her or him, this is what I would do. This is what I would say. Guys, stand like a guard at the door of your mind. And when an intrusive thought comes in, or a bitter thought, an holy thought, filter that through the Word. Filter that through the Lord. Before it takes root and it begins to build a blueprint for destruction. And lastly, number 4, unrepentant hatred will desensitize your soul to the pain you cause. And I think the most chilling scene in this text is 10 grown men casually sitting down, eating lunch, while their 17-year-old brother is screaming for mercy from the top of his lungs. And he's in this dark hole, and they just don't even batter an eye. That's what happens when you don't repent of your hatred. You become numb to it. So ask the Lord, if this is you, ask the Lord to break you. Ask the Lord, give me a heart of love for this person. Yeah, maybe I have a right to feel justified, in my hatred. But here's the thing, guys. The Lord was justified in hating us. The Lord was justified to, I'm done with this people and I'm going to start a new world. The Lord said, no, I love them. Yeah, I have every right to combat and to destroy this people, but no, I'm going to seek reconciliation. And this is the call for all of us. If the Lord can forgive you of your sin, that you sin just about every week, every day, the Lord, you can forgive others. So don't hold on to hatred. Don't hold on to bitterness, because it will collapse your house. It's just a little mold. Oh, now it's a little, I can still control it. And then the ceiling collapsed, and then you have no house. Why? Because that hatred. And you didn't evict it. You didn't eradicate it. And again, this is not just hatred. This is any number of sins. Sin is a good mathematician. It will multiply. So ask the Lord, give me a heart of love. Give me a heart of love towards this person who I'm having a hard time loving. And the Lord will give you that heart.